Imagine a world 2 million years ago, where a remarkable species, Homo erectus, walked the earth. But what makes their journey so special? They lived long enough to coexist with our own species, Homo sapiens. Homo erectus, the most successful human in history, inhabiting vast regions across Africa, Asia, and Europe. Regarded by some as the first human in our evolutionary journey, bearing a closer resemblance to us than any other living being that came before it. They looked like us, talked like us, and likely communicated in a language like us. Through recent discoveries, we have learned about their advanced capabilities, from crafting sophisticated tools to constructing shelters, and even displaying evidence of care for the elderly and weak. Their resilience in navigating 2 million years of challenging environments and formidable predators laid the foundation for our existence today. Compared with us Homo sapiens, which have only been around for the last 300,000 years, Homo erectus, or upright man, had a reign far longer, living from a breathtaking 2 million years ago until as recently as only 100,000 years ago. With the last ones holding on in Dandong, on the island of Java, Indonesia, where fossils of a dozen skull caps and 2 shin bones date back to around 108 to 117,000 years ago. As Homo sapiens were definitely living at this time, you may think, did we overlap and maybe interact with them? Homo sapiens left Africa for Europe and Asia roughly 190,000 years ago. We know this thanks to a new finding of a modern human fossil at Masliya Cave in Israel, which dates to between 177,000 and 194,000 years ago. The oldest evidence of Homo sapiens on Java, where Homo erectus last clung on, date to between only 60 and 70,000 years ago. So unfortunately, Homo erectus did not endure long enough on Java to interact with modern humans. And no fossil evidence elsewhere in the world points to direct interactions between erectus and modern humans. But one interesting observation made from the Public Library of Science Biology relating to this is in the genome of head lice. The study reveals that human head lice come from 2 ancient groups, dating back about 1.18 million years, the time that Homo erectus was extant, but preceding the existence of modern Homo sapiens. One lineage of the head lice is widespread globally and experienced a population bottleneck around 100,000 years ago, aligning with modern humans. The other lineage, exclusive to the Americas, has remained separate for the entire 1.18 million years. The split between these louse lineages corresponds to early Homo species divergences, suggesting they evolved alongside archaic humans and the one leading to modern humans. If the lice indeed evolved with Homo erectus 1.18 million years ago, a recent switch from Homo erectus to modern humans must have happened, requiring direct contact between erectus and sapiens. But as no fossil evidence is out there for direct interactions, scientists are still skeptical about direct contact. Hopefully, with more archaeological and scientific work, we will uncover the mystery. The first fossils found of Homo erectus were discovered in 1891 by Dutchman Eugene Dubois, when he unearthed a well-preserved skull cap at Trinil on the Solo River, on the island of Java. After years of searching Indonesia for the missing link between ape and man, due to the erectus fossil's prominent brow ridges, retreating forehead, and angled rear skull, he claimed he had found it. Other scientists dismissed this interpretation at this time, but Dubois's opinion was validated when a series of similar fossils of Homo erectus were uncovered in China during the 1920s and 30s. Throughout the evolutionary history of Homo erectus, there is substantial evidence for selection leading towards increase in brain size, so that while early members of the lineage have a cranial capacity of 600 to 800 cubic centimeters, like this Ectectus skull named Dan 5P1, found at the Gunna site in Ethiopia, whose proportions are closer to those of Australopiths than later humans. While in a series of Middle Pleistocene crania from Africa, Asia, and Europe, volume is up to 1,230 cubic centimeters, the same size as Albert Einstein's. This is because as early Homo erectus confronted new environmental challenges and adapted to larger bodies, Their evolution also saw the development of larger and more complex brains, and large, complex brains can process and store a lot more information. Homo erectus was the first hominin to have a flat face and a prominent nose. This is thought to have helped it retain moisture when breathing dry air. But unlike modern humans, Erectus also had a flat, robust low skull. In 2004, Noel Boaz and Russell Siashan suggested it was a result of a cultural practice, wherein Homo erectus would fight each other with fists, stones, or clubs to settle disputes or battle for mates. Since the skull is reinforced in key areas, capable of absorbing heavy blows, the heavy brow ridge protects the eyes, and transitions into a bar covering the ears, connecting all the way in the back of the skull, meaning blows to any of these regions can be effectively dissipated across the skull. Many skullcaps bear usually debilitating fractures, such as the Peking man skull X, yet they can show signs of surviving and healing. Anthropologist Peter Brown suggested a similar reason for the unusual thickening of the modern Australian Aboriginal skull, a result of a ritual popular in Central and Southeast Australian tribes where adversaries would whack each other with waddies until knockout. The brow ridges of our ancestors were possibly also a social signal, a sign of strength and dominance, or simply a feature that strengthened the skull from impacts, or probably both. We later humans soon lost these as social communication became more important, leading to be able to read subtle emotions. Their jaw was much more robust than ours. It was large and thick without a pointed chin. Dentally, Homo erectus possesses the thinnest enamel among Plio-Pleistocene hominins. While enamel shields teeth from breaking with hard foods, it hinders shearing through tough foods. Mandibles in Homo erectus, and all early Homo, exhibit greater thickness than those in modern humans and living apes. This thickness resists torsion during biting or chewing, potentially allowing for unusually powerful stresses while eating, though the practical implications remain unclear. Despite being somewhat thinner than early hominins, the mandibular bodies of Homo erectus suggest a capability for robust jaw function. Moreover, a higher frequency of pits in their premolars and molars compared to earlier species like Homo habilis indicates a diet rich in brittle foods, possibly influenced by tool use, limiting the range of foods Homo erectus could process. Like modern humans, Homo erectus varied widely in size, ranging from 4 feet 9 to 6 feet 1 inch height and 40 to 68 kilograms in weight. Thought to be due to regional differences in climate, mortality rates, and nutrition. Among primates, this is actually very rare. This marked of a response to environmental stressors called phenotypic plasticity is only demonstrated in modern humans. Homo erectus exhibited sexual dimorphism, meaning there were noticeable differences in size and sometimes other physical characteristics between males and females. In general, male Homo erectus individuals tended to be larger and more robust than females. This sexual dimorphism is inferred from fossil evidence, including differences in skeletal size and morphology. Sexual dimorphism has the potential to provide a unique window into the social structure of an extinct population like Homo erectus. Over 97 1.5 million-year-old footprints made by at least 20 different individuals from near Illirit, Kenya, indicate that Homo erectus was more dimorphic than modern Homo sapiens, although less so than highly dimorphic apes, such as gorillas, and extinct species like Australopithecus africanus and Paranthropus robustus, suggesting that the Illirit footprints offer a unique window into an important transitional period in hominin social behavior. These same footprints also indicate Homo erectus was the first in the human lineage to have a modern human gait. The footprints and skeletal evidence suggests they had about the same limb configurations and proportions as modern humans, implying human-like locomotion. They were also the first in our lineage to possess a human-like shoulder, suggesting an ability for high-speed throwing. This adaptation would have been a major evolutionary advantage, enabling them to effectively hurl rocks, wooden javelins, or any other lethal weapon, facilitating the hunting of large game for valuable, calorie-rich meat. Contrast to their early hominin predecessors, such as Homo habilis, who still had chimp-like shoulders, ill-suited for accurate object throwing. As primates and mammals, we possess a distinctive trait, our relatively hairless skin. While aquatic mammals such as whales and dolphins, along with elephants, share this characteristic, most primates and mammals are typically adorned with a furry coat. In order to comprehend why humans have significantly less body hair than other primates, one must understand that mammalian body hair is not merely an aesthetic characteristic. It protects the skin from wounds, parasites, heat, cold, and UV radiation. Homo erectus was the first member of the genus Homo to be hairless, originating in them at least 1.2 million years ago. The dissipation of body heat remains the most widely accepted evolutionary explanation for the loss of body hair in early members of the genus Homo, the surviving member of which is modern humans. Less hair, and an increase in sweat glands, made it easier for their bodies to cool when they moved from living in shady forests to open savanna. This change in environment also resulted in a change in diet, from largely vegetarian to hunting. Pursuing game on the savanna also increased the need for regulation of body heat. Anthropologist and paleobiologist Nina Jablonski posits that the ability to dissipate excess body heat through eccrine sweating also helped make possible the dramatic enlargement of the brain, the most temperature-sensitive human organ. Thus, the loss of fur was also a factor in further adaptations, both physical and behavioral, that differentiated humans from other primates. Some of these changes are thought to be the result of sexual selection. By selecting more hairless mates, Homo erectus accelerated changes initiated by natural selection. Most mammals have light skin that is covered by fur, and biologists believe that early human ancestors started out this way also. But this changed with Homo erectus. Genetic analysis suggests that high activity in the melanocortin-1 receptor, which would produce dark skin, dates back with Homo erectus 1.2 million years ago, as mentioned earlier. The dark pigmentation, specifically melanin, served as a natural sun cream, helping to prevent skin damage and reduce the risk of conditions like skin cancer in regions with high sun exposure. Having dark skin would have provided a survival advantage for Homo erectus by serving better protection against the sun's intense rays. Populations of Homo erectus in higher latitudes potentially developed lighter skin to prevent vitamin D deficiency. Consider the model of modern human movement. The earliest sapiens arose in Africa, subject to the tropical sun, migrated into Asia and expanded to cover Europe. Given that Homo erectus had more time to spread across and adapt to Asia and Europe, it is assumed Homo erectus would have shown the same skin tone flexibility as ours today. A 500 to 300,000 year old Homo erectus specimen from Turkey was diagnosed with the earliest known case of tuberculous meningitis, which is typically exacerbated in dark-skinned people living in higher latitudes due to vitamin D deficiency. A 1.8 million year old Homo erectus specimen named Mojokerto I, found in Java, who died at about 1 year of age, presented 72 to 84% of the average adult brain size, compared to around only 50% in modern human 1-year-olds. This shows that Homo erectus's faster brain growth trajectory is closer to great apes than to modern humans. This indicates that Homo erectus was probably not cognitively comparable to modern humans, and that an extended childhood and long period of dependency due to the great amount of time required for brain maturation evolved much later in human evolution, perhaps in the modern human and Neanderthal last common ancestor, possibly Homo heidelbergensis. While not reaching the intellectual capacities of modern humans, Homo erectus would have still been at the top of the chain in terms of cognitive prowess on the planet. Some scientists distinguish between the African erectus they call ergaster and Asian erectus they call Homo erectus sensu stricto, because of slightly different characteristics. For example, the face of the African individuals tend to be higher and less broad across the orbits. But modern humans of today also have different characteristics from region to region, and we don't get split into different categories, while other scientists lump them together as just Homo erectus, which makes sense, and also makes it easier for the video. Their evolution. It is generally agreed that Homo erectus descended from an earlier species of Homo habilis, an early member of the genus Homo who still possessed ape-like features. including long arms and a moderately prognathic face, roughly 2 million years ago, and represents one of the widest dispersals of early humans in our evolutionary history. Though this has been called into question because they coexisted for at least 500,000 years. Alternatively, a group of Homo habilis may have been reproductively isolated, and only this group developed into Homo erectus. If not, it may mean that Homo erectus descended from an early, undiscovered primitive Homo. It is heavily debated where Homo erectus evolved, as fossils have been found 2 million years ago in both Africa and in China. A 2011 study suggested that it was Homo habilis who reached West Asia from Africa, that early Homo erectus developed there, and that early Homo erectus would then have dispersed from West Asia to East Asia, then into Southeast Asia, then back into Africa, where it then evolved into modern humans. Other studies have suggested that Homo erectus developed in Africa, where it eventually evolved into modern humans. It is likely that it was distinct populations of Homo erectus in Africa that led to the emergence of later hominin species, such as Homo heidelbergensis, and ultimately to our own species, Homo sapiens. At the beginning of its time range, around 1.9 million years ago, Homo erectus coexisted in East Africa with several other early human species including Homo ridofensis, Homo habilis, and Paranthropus boisei. Sometimes they were even found at the same fossil sites. At the end of its time range, around 100,000 years ago, it possibly coexisted with Homo floresiensis in Indonesia. Given the time frame and geographic position, there's also a good chance they may have interacted, and even interbred with the mysterious Denisovans in Southeast Asia. And that could explain the ghost genomes detected in Denisovan remains, which scientists have been able to extract from just a pinky bone and 2 molars. How did they hunt? Persistence hunting has been suggested to be a key strategy for meat acquisition in Homo erectus, thanks to their bipedalism, slender build, and hairless skin that facilitated effective temperature regulation through sweating during prolonged pursuits. Scientific findings indicate that Homo erectus could sustain running for up to 5.5 hours without water, giving them a significant advantage in outrunning prey and establishing them as highly successful hunters. The hunting strategies and prey selection would have depended on the available resources in their respective region and habitats. But Homo erectus is believed to have been a versatile hunter-gatherer, preying on a variety of animals for sustenance. While the specifics may vary on region, there is evidence Homo erectus hunted bovids, deer, wild boar, and even elephants. In 1988, scientists found the remains of an elephant and numerous dismembered skeletons of giant now extinct baboons along with 400 flake tools near Alergsele, Kenya, from between 790 and 992,000 years ago. Many bones had obvious cut marks and the medius limbs were not present, and if these animals had indeed been hunted rather than scavenged, it would have required great skill to bring down such powerful animals, suggesting they hunted in cooperative groups, another reason to indicate they had some sort of early primitive language. It can credibly be supposed that, as with present-day hunters such as the African sand bushmen and the Australian aboriginals, meat from the hunt formed only a part of the diet of Homo erectus. Other juicy morsels may have been furnished by snakes, birds and their eggs, locusts, scorpions, centipedes, tortoises, rodents, hedgehogs, fish, and crustaceans. Even children could have caught many of these, as they still do in Africa's Kalahari Desert today, before being allowed to accompany the older males on the hunt. Vegetable food, such as fleshy leaves, fruits, nuts, roots, and tubers, also must have been important in the diet of Homo erectus. Accumulations of hackberry seeds, for example, were found in the Zhoukoudian cave deposits in China, where the famous Peking man was found. It seems to be little doubt that Homo erectus was omnivorous, for such a diet is the most opportunistic of all, and modern humans are the most opportunistic of all living primates. Homo erectus was probably one of the earliest of the great opportunists, and it is likely that this attribute endowed the species with adaptability and evolutionary flexibility. Though Homo erectus were prolific hunters for their time, they would have also no doubt been prey for some fierce predators. 2/3 of Homo erectus fossils found in Locomotion, China, contain damage consistent with that caused by puncture marks from a carnivore's pointed front teeth, most likely those of a hyena. In fact, this well-fossilized crushed Homo erectus skull found at Locomotion has puncture marks perfectly matching the teeth of the extinct giant hyena Pachycracuta brevirostris, or short-faced hyena. Another cave in Zhoukoudian, China, contained skeletal elements of Homo erectus individuals scattered over areas of the cave floor of up to 9 meters in diameter. It showed that 67% of the erectus individuals showed bite marks or other modifications ascribed to large mammalian carnivores. Homo erectus likely experienced intense competition and constant vigilance due to the presence of carnivores, prompting a heightened state of caution and fear. The ability they had to form groups and collaborate for protection would have been an advantage, but for some unlucky erectuses, they would have definitely been in the bellies of some ferocious ancient predators. What did they use to butcher? Homo erectus is believed to have started off using simple but effective hand axes for hunting and butchering animals. But later on down the line of Homo erectus evolution, the hand axes they used were sophisticated, and marked a significant improvement in their tool technology, showing the mental advances these early humans made. The earliest hand axes believed to have been made by Homo erectus are tools from or of the type found in Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, where they were discovered in large quantities. The earliest known Oldowan tools date from 2.6 million years ago and were in Ghana, Ethiopia. This suggests the first maker of these stone hand axes were actually either Homo habilis, or was Australopithecus garhi, and Homo erectus inherited them. Oldowan tools were characterized by their simple construction, predominantly using core forms. These cores were river pebbles, or rocks similar to them, that had been struck by a spherical hammerstone to cause conchoidal fractures, removing flakes from one surface, creating an edge and often a sharp tip. The blunt end is the proximal surface, the sharp, the distal. Oldowan is a percussion technology. Grasping the proximal surface, the hominid brought the distal surface down hard on an object he wished to detach or shatter, such as a bone or tuber. Skip ahead a couple 100,000 years in Homo erectus tool-making evolution, and you get more complex hand axes called Acheulean, named after the site of Saint Achille in France. Developed 1.76 million years ago, Acheulean tools were characterized not by a core, but by a biface, the most notable form of which was the hand axe. The earliest Acheulean axe appeared in the West Turkana area of Kenya and around the same time in southern Africa. Acheulean axes are larger, heavier, and have sharp cutting edges that are chipped from opposite sides into a teardrop shape. In contrast to an Oldowan tool, which is the result of a fortuitous and probably extempore operation to obtain one sharp edge on a stone, an Acheulean tool is a planned result of a manufacturing process. The manufacturer begins with a blank, either a larger stone or a slab knocked off a larger rock. From this blank the maker removes large flakes, to be used as cores. Standing a core on edge on an anvil stone, the maker hits the exposed edge with centripetal blows of a hard hammer to roughly shape the implement. Then the piece must be worked over again, or retouched, with a soft hammer of wood or bone to produce a tool finely chipped all over, consisting of two convex surfaces intersecting in a sharp edge. These newer, more complex Acheulean hand axes endured for more than 1 million years, little changed from the earliest versions found, indicating their efficiency, requiring no need for improvement. Though fossil remains of the tool makers are not preserved, the hand axes clearly archive the evolution of innovation in craftsmanship, acquired intelligence, and social behavior in a pre-modern human community over a million-year interval. Other tools. Homo erectus produced tools from shells at the sites of Sangaran, Trinil. Spherical stones, measuring 6 to 12 centimeters and 2.4 to 4.7 centimeters in diameter, are frequently found in African and Chinese Lower Paleolithic sites, and were potentially used as bolas. Could they build? Homo erectus shown some level of architectural adaptation. There is evidence that Homo erectus constructed 50-foot-long branch huts for shelter, with stone slabs or animal skins for floors. The first houses were thought to be windbreaks made of animal skins stretched over a frame. The oldest recognized shelter from this era was found at the site of Terra Amida, Nice, France, in 1960. The shelter was a collection of 12 individual oval shelters that ranged from 26 feet all the way to 49 feet in length, and had a width of between 13 and 20 feet. Homo erectus used fire to keep warm, and the huts within the shelters were ringed with small rocks to form a fireline around the edge of the dug pits for wood. Ancient humans thought to be Homo erectus that lived 350,000 years ago near present-day Bilzingsleben, East Germany, constructed shelters similar to those of Bushmen in southern Africa. Circular bone and stone foundations were discovered in 3 huts, which were between 9 and 13 feet across. In the middle of one circle, archaeologists found an elephant tusk, which they speculated was a center post. But this may have been Homo heidelbergensis, and is debated by scientists. Did they use fire? Once again, Homo erectus was a pioneer of another great human feat: fire. One of the most important aspects of Homo erectus culture was the controlled use of fire. Being able to produce fire meant that Homo erectus could keep wild animals at bay and cook their food. Cooked meat was healthier and far easier to digest. Originally, fire would be an opportunistic find, and the flame would be kept going for as long as possible. Later, the species discovered how to create fire. Homo erectus is credited as the first human ancestor to have used fire, though the timing of this invention is debated mainly because campfires very rarely and very poorly preserve over long periods of time, let alone thousands or millions of years. The earliest claimed fire sites are in Kenya, at Kubifora, 1.5 million years ago, and South Africa, Wonderwork Cave, 1.7 million years ago. The first Homo erectus firekeepers are thought to have simply transported to caves and maintained naturally occurring fires for extended periods of time, or only sporadically when the opportunity arose. Maintaining fires would require firekeepers to have knowledge on slow-burning materials such as dung. Fire becomes markedly more abundant in the wider archaeological record after 400,000 to 300,000 years ago, which can be explained as some advancement in fire management techniques took place at this time, or our human ancestors only opportunistically used fire until this time. It is possible that fire starting was invented and lost and reinvented multiple times and independently by different erectus communities rather than being invented in one place and spreading throughout the world. The earliest evidence of hearths comes from Gesher Banat Yaakov, Israel, over 700,000 years ago, where fire is recorded in multiple layers in an area close to water, both uncharacteristic of natural fires. The long history of people sitting around the campfire telling stories started with Homo erectus, and this practice had a massive effect on the evolution of social capabilities and possibly the complexity of human speech. It could be proposed that increased social activity, such as sitting around a campfire, facilitated the need for complex ideas to be communicated through language. Violence and cannibalism. Homo erectus skulls found in India show a large number of head wounds. Were these caused by warfare or do they show that erectus was going after big game? It is hard to say for sure. Cut marks made on human bones, similar to those made with Homo erectus tools on butchered animals, have been found in sites ranging from South Africa to Croatia. Some scientists think this indicates that cannibalism may have been part of Homo species behavior for hundreds of thousands of years. Even as Homo sapiens were eating each other not so long ago, in Goff's Cave in the United Kingdom, anthropologists discovered bite marks on 15,000-year-old human bones, as if the long-ago eaters were trying to scrape off every millimeter of nutritious muscle. They also turned up hundreds of filleting marks and ritualistic incisions on bones, and even unearthed skulls apparently modified for use as cups. Erectus skulls dated to be 500,000 years old found in caves in Longshan, China, appear to have been severed from the body and preserved, presumably as trophies, or the purpose of this may have been to obtain the strength of the deceased. This is up for debate. Critics of these claim the marks made on the skulls were more likely made by giant hyenas than other hominins. Language. Could they talk? Some scientists have theorized that Homo erectus must have possessed some form of rudimentary language because it needed to communicate to organize hunts and pass on information about tool making. The parts of the Homo erectus brain associated with reasoning, symbolism, and imagination thought were relatively undeveloped. The frontal lobe, where complex thinking takes place in modern humans, was relatively small. The small hole in its vertebrae probably meant that not enough information was transferred from the brain to the lungs, neck, and mouth to make speech possible. Homo erectus didn't have the gene necessary for speech and language to develop, known as FOXP2, which is found only in modern humans and Neanderthals. A lot of scientists think they communicated with simple grunts, and couldn't produce speech like modern humans. Whether conveyed through grunts or just a few distinct sounds, the communication among Homo erectus, even in its basic form, is still considered a language. The knowledge passed on through the crafting of the Acheulean stone tools would have faced considerable challenges without a rudimentary language, facilitating instruction and understanding. If modern humans are the Tesla of language, then Homo erectus were the Model Ts. They built the foundations for communication that everyone on this planet relies on today. Did they create art? Homo erectus may have created the oldest piece of art ever found. A zigzag engraving on a mussel shell may transform scientific understanding of what has long been considered a defining human capacity: artistic creativity. Until now, the earliest evidence of geometric art was dated from 70,000 to 100,000 years ago. Scratched into rocks found in South African caves, those engravings signify behavioral modernity, Homo sapiens' unique cognitive journey into a sophisticated world of abstraction and symbol. The zigzag pattern found on the fossilized shell, dated to 430,000 years ago, in Java, Indonesia, is believed to be the world's earliest known engraving, demonstrating the species' manual dexterity and perhaps symbolism and art. The pattern consists, from posterior to anterior, of a zigzag line with 3 sharp turns producing an M shape, a set of more superficial parallel lines, and a zigzag with 2 turns producing a mirrored N shape. A study done from marine biologist Josephine Jordans and her colleagues stated the morphology of the zigzags, internal morphology of the grooves, and differential roughness of the surrounding shell area demonstrates that the grooves were deliberately engraved and predate shell burial and weathering. The Middle Pleistocene Venus of Tantan and Venus of Barakat Ram are postulated to have been crafted by Homo erectus to resemble a human form. They were mostly formed by natural weathering, but slightly modified to emphasize certain grooves to suggest hairline, limbs, and eyes. The former has traces of pigments on the front side, possibly indicating it was colored. Homo erectus was also the earliest human to have intentionally collected red-colored pigments, namely ochre, recorded as early as the Middle Pleistocene. Ochre lumps at Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, associated with the 1.4 million years old Olduvai hominin 9, and Ambrona, Spain, which dates to 424 to 374,000 years ago, were both suggested to have been struck by a hammerstone and purposefully shaped and trimmed. At Terra Amata, France, which dates to 425 to 325,000 years ago, red, yellow, and brown ochres were recovered in association with pole structures. Ochre was probably heated to achieve such a wide color range, as it is unclear if Homo erectus could have used ochre for any practical application. Ochre collection might indicate that Homo erectus was the earliest human to have exhibited a sense of aesthetics and to think beyond simply survival. Seafaring. Acheulean artifacts discovered on isolated islands that were never connected to land in the Pleistocene may show seafaring by Homo erectus as early as 1 million years ago in Indonesia. They had arrived on the islands of Flores, Timor, and Roti, which would have necessitated crossing the Lombok Strait, or also known as the Wallace Line, at least before 800,000 years ago. And this wouldn't have been easy. The Lombok Strait is 24 miles wide, 250 meters deep, and has a fierce current because of its location as a main channel for the Indonesian throughflow, which is matchmaker to two of the great oceans of the world, the Indian and the Pacific, which have differences in temperature and sea levels, making it such a treacherous stretch of sea. Suggesting maybe the earliest, seafaring civilization, that knew how to build sophisticated crafts and sail the ancient seas. Again, indicating their communicational abilities. If they could paddle to remote islands, they must have had to communicate through spoken language. Healthcare. The earliest probable example of infirming sick group members is a 1.77 million-year-old Homo erectus specimen from Georgia, who had lost all but one tooth due to age or gum disease. The earliest example of severe chewing impairment, yet still survived for several years afterwards. Unable to chew, this individual probably ate soft plant or animal foods, possibly with assistance from other group members. A 1.5 million-year-old Turkana boy was diagnosed with juvenile spinal disc herniation, and because this specimen was still growing, this caused some scoliosis. These usually cause recurrent lower back pain and sciatica, pain running down the leg, and likely restricted Turkana boy in walking, bending, and other daily activities. The specimen appears to have survived into adolescence, which evidences advanced group care. A 1 million to 700,000-year-old Java man specimen presents a noticeable osteocyte on the femur, likely Paget's disease of bone, and osteopetrosis, thickening of the bone, likely resulting from skeletal fluorosis caused by ingestion of food contaminated by fluorine-filled volcanic ash, as the specimen was found in ash-filled strata. This individual would have had trouble to walk, hunt, and gather, providing a net negative to his group, and still lived years with these injuries, proving again advanced group care and love. Livestock that grazes on volcanic ash-ridden fields typically die of acute intoxication within a few days or weeks. What happened to Homo erectus? It isn't clear why Homo erectus went extinct. It was probably due to multiple factors, but the main theory seems to be a combination of climate change and being outcompeted by later, more advanced humans such as Heidelbergensis, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans. A team of researchers found that Homo erectus lost a significant portion of their climatic niche area just before they became extinct. Species are good at surviving when they have a large area at their disposal to live in. But when livable areas decrease and the result is small patches that are geographically isolated from each other, species enter what is known as an extinction vortex. The reductions in livable area resulted from sudden climatic changes. The team found that Homo erectus went extinct during the last glacial period, which began about 115,000 years ago. The researchers suggest this was the coldest period the species had ever experienced, lacking the cognitive capabilities and adaptability of modern humans, ultimately led to their extinction. A reason why they stayed thriving for some time in Java after they went extinct elsewhere was because they were outcompeted by more advanced human species. But Java's location allowed it to thrive in isolation. And the last ones here died off due to the area becoming wetter, and the rainforest on Java expanded, replacing the open woodland environment associated with Homo erectus. One study even suggested laziness and conservative tendencies, an example being not progressing their stone tool technology as the environment around them changed. But this is rightfully not an accepted theory by many. But finally, we have to recognize that the concept of extinction may not be the best way to describe what happened to Homo erectus. Many researchers think that Homo erectus did not go extinct, but instead evolved into new species of hominids like Homo heidelbergensis. This evolution could have involved interbreeding with other hominid species, we don't know, but it doesn't seem to be accurate to insinuate that Homo erectus simply died off. It may be just as likely they evolved into something else. In conclusion, Homo erectus stands as a crucial chapter in our shared evolutionary narrative. From their remarkable tool-making skills to their pioneering use of fire, Homo erectus laid the groundwork for the ingenuity and adaptability that define us as modern humans. The question of whether Homo erectus is our direct ancestor or part of a parallel branch in the human family tree remains a topic of scholarly debate. The most accepted theory is that Homo erectus gave rise to Homo heidelbergensis, who then gave rise to us, modern humans, the only survivors left. But human evolution, like evolution in other species, did not proceed in a straight line. Instead, a diversity of species diverged from common ancestors, like branches on a bush. So, whether they may be our direct ancestor or a great-grandfather, Homo erectus played a pivotal role in human evolution by exhibiting advanced traits, such as tool use, a form of language, use of fire, adaptation to diverse environments, and many more, contributing to the evolutionary path that ultimately led to us, modern humans. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Goodbye all.